Where did you go to school?
And here's your name.
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason morons.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink eye? Is this what pink eye is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
I had to actually Google what neo-Nazi meant.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do it slowly.
Well, I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome to the Conditional Release Program. I'm Joel, Dak is away, and we are making do with the brilliant Brendan from the Dirt Unit podcast, which is a podcast we highly recommend for much more cook takes on what the world is doing, where it's going, and often he's joined on that podcast by a good friend of the podcast, Daniel Morrison, who basically bounces off Brendan with ideas and then goes down rabbit holes of deep, dark networks of fuckwits. We are going to be looking at a deep, dark network of fuckwits today. We've done part 1. We're at part 2. Part 3 will come. So in this part, we're going to be looking at the money. Follow the money. And where does the money come from? Well, generally speaking, it comes from nepo babies whose fathers were pieces of shit. And they're generally trying to perpetuate their horrible, horrible impact on the world by trying to convince the world that rich people are an endangered species and should be protected with all of our lives, which is probably something that we've seen through history. But, oh man, just the way rich fuckers do it these days is utterly sickening. So, of course, libertarian is basically just a French word for rich, whingy bitch. And we are going to be looking at the moneyed people who have to basically prop up an ideology with millions and millions of dollars and an extensive network of influence operations because the ideology itself doesn't hold up to scrutiny. So yeah, enjoy this fun look at the arsehole rich fucks that are funding and perpetuating an ideology that should have died the first time someone said, don't worry, the free market will fix that. And don't forget, CVCO are still very much sponsoring this podcast. It is not CVCO's fault that we're not putting out episodes. The coupon code is still in play. CRP10 at cvco.beer still works. As far as I last checked, I actually bought beer from them not too long ago because I ran out and I just thought I have to have more of that IPA because it is probably the best beer in Australia. And I'm not kidding. But for you guys who don't like resin thick West Coast IPAs, there's the pale ale, Goldie for people who like a bit of a mid-style lager. There's midi, and also the small ale, which is the classic pale ale, but with less booze. And to be honest, as we're all getting older, I don't think our demographics are getting any younger. We kind of need a bit of a lower alcohol option. Head over to cbco.beer, put in CRP10, and get beer.
I still haven't worked it out yet. And if you haven't worked it out, keep asking the question. And keep looking for the answers. Because it's irrelevant.
And now we are back to Do Atlas Rise Part 2, which is a look at the Atlas Network and the sort of libertarian fuckknuckles that fund it and organize it and do it and suck and generally try and make the world a more individualistic, greedy and shittier place because an ideology that believes in basically nothing. There's
decentralization.
No decentralization. Yeah. How's that going? All right, cool. I believe Hobbes
that's it. That's all. That's mining through their values. That's pretty much it.
Let's make life brutish and short.
Yeah.
And violent. That's great because that's how that works out. Anyway. Other people have other arguments. Rousseau is a fucking idiot.
But their arguments are funded by Russia.
They are. Yeah, they are. And also just rich people who are famously benevolent, especially the ones who inherited their wealth.
Yeah. And let's not, I know we did a big preamble on Russia, but let's not forget that the billionaires are way worse.
Yeah. They are. They are cunty.
It's not illegal for them.
No. So, where were we? What the fuck even happened last time? It was yonks ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And I've not even read this since. So I've been learning a lot of this stuff for the first time again.
Okay. It's always fun. It's like watching a TV show and being like, I don't remember any of this. This is great.
Yeah.
Having a great fucking time.
What's going on in between? I had a baby. Well, I didn't have the baby, but
Well,
may as well have.
Steal the credit.
Work just as hard.
That's right. You felt a spiritual pain while she was
Yeah, I had
hopped
to
up in
like
the hospital bed.
give her words of encouragement.
You didn't even get an epidural.
I didn't
So
even get a like
Not even a
barely any
painkiller.
recognition for it. I'll tell you what.
Not even a headache pill.
No, exactly. Yeah, the nurses didn't even care.
Our male grievances are being aired. Maybe we're being funded by
almost
Russia.
pulled my back out, but who cares about me?
On our Russian talking
No,
points.
but
It's
she did
minimise
really
pregnancy.
she did really good work, that wife of mine.
Yeah. It's
But
impressive.
anyway,
Fuck
a
that.
lot has happened. But we'll just recap on what we went over. So we pretty much went over the entire like sort of starting of a few key aspects of this conglomerate in Australia, mostly the Atlas Network being the conglomerate we're talking about. But the other thing we looked at the roots of was the IPA and the Liberal Party.
Yep.
Like the IPA, and as a consequence of that, the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
So we learned about how there was a group formed during like the post World War II Reconstruction in opposition to the monetary fund, whatever it was, called the Walter Lippmann Colloquium, and then they became the Mont Pelerin Society, and then the Mont Pelerin Society continues to today, and they make up the core of the Atlas Network, which was basically just started by members of the Mont Pelerin Society as this web of think tanks to fund, coordinate, train, just do everything that makes the whole sort of right-wing sphere across the entire world on sync with their talking points.
Push free market economics and libertarian ideals, and also do that on a global scale. Because,
Or just push what? This is the. I guess this is kind of the point of this part of the examination of Atlas. Is to say, well, because they you can start listing libertarian talking points as the kind of values they teach, but it's like they teach whatever the people that fund them tell them to teach. And they disguise it behind vague libertarian sounding language, but really, like they're just the people that fund them are the people whose talking points they push, and so we think of the fossil fuel industry when we think of Atlas.
It's easy to make money when things are deregulated.
Exactly. And people don't believe that you're fucking the climate of the entire planet.
Yeah, exactly. And and not only that, but of course, if you force developing countries to deregulate and open their markets when they're not ready, then you can basically just go in there with capital and demolish their domestic industry and pillage their country for resources and labor and talent and profit.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, really conveniently, just following some kind of like civil unrest that happened.
Never let a good crisis get away, bro.
That's literally on their website. Is that might be slightly different, but pretty much that exact phrase.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Chrysotudity.
Yeah.
One thing that we kind of like we kind of glossed over in the last one, and even when I was putting like the whole thing together, and it was an interesting point, but still kind of glossed over it. And I've been thinking about it a lot since we recorded the first bit, and it's worth packing over. I think we've stumbled upon a legitimate, like, actual Australian conspiracy here with this group of people called the Group, who were the funders of the Nationalist Party. So they funded Joseph Lyons to leave the Labor Party in the 30s to then start the not the Nationalist Party, the United Australia Party, with the Nationalist Party and another couple around the Country Party and some other random parties. And he headed that back by this group of people just referred to as the Group, who then which included Sir Robert Menzies, who became the Attorney General under Lyons, and then this group went on to form the IPA when the United Australia Party disbanded. And then this group, as an initiative of the IPA, started the Liberal Party.
Yeah. There you go.
That sounds to me like a pretty shady fucking conspiracy of some scheming, very well-off, influential people just kind of brushed aside that no one really talks about or knows about.
Sounds not either not fun or complex. No, it's not fun, and it's too complex for cookers. When it comes down to these sort of things, I can't imagine actual conspiracies are exciting because there's no like UFOs or any way to sort of center yourself. That's the problem with like these new conspiracy theories. They've got to be
It's interesting that you say
in
that
process.
because I won't say any details because it's like I'm still like researching this, but members of this group have cropped up in some other research I've been doing recently, and it's really spicy.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
It's something that would grab the attention of cookers.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe we can fucking deprogram them by getting them paranoid about libertarians. John Ruddock starts getting all these fucking hate mail. This is fucking you, cunt. You're a Mount Perrier guy, aren't you, fucker?
Well, he's not actually.
Well, did he not get invited?
Maybe. Probably not. I mean, he'd be a fellow of a think tank that's like gets funding from Atlas or whatever. But
he's not quite there yet.
But there's we'll get to it because I'll touch on the who is a member of the Mont Pelerin Society as we go on. But I thought just to sort of refresh us on these characters and who are founding this network. Just to refresh us on, maybe like what they're all about and whatever. I just got this little excerpt I found from a write-up on the book of this von Hayek guy, who's one of the founders of the Mont Pelerin Society,
Austrian economist, free market guy.
Yes, his book. It's about his book, Road to Serfdom, and it says talk about Nazi ideas, the radical alternatives that von Hayek posed: strict monetarism, near total deregulation, and pan-European federalism were all expressions of the same feudalist outlook that produced Hitler's National Socialism and the thousands of other varieties of conservative revolutionism after World War I. Mm-hmm. We shall not rebuild civilization on a large scale, he wrote in Road to Serfdom. It's no accident that on the whole there was more beauty and decency to be found in the life of the small peoples, and that amongst the large ones there was more happiness and content in proportion as they had avoided the deadly blight of centralization.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting insofar as like that lines up so much with this, like I'm sure it's not a new phenomenon, but such a prominent phenomenon with the whole sort of trad wife thing of all these like, always massive breasts and they washing dishes on these giant country estates, rolling fields of green, beautifully manicured lawns, and they're just saying, you know what? You just need to leave the grind of the city. You need to come out and connect with nature.
Grow some veggies, man.
Fantastically pointed out. They're like, that stove behind her is worth $35,000, and she comes from like this like fucking family of like trucking companies or some shit. It's like, just move out in the middle of nowhere. You'll be fine. Just make sure that you're a multimillionaire and you're set to inherit hundreds of millions of dollars, and you can have a $35,000 stove
pick up
as
Daddy's
well.
paycheck on the weekly.
Oh yeah, make sure you got a PO box. Because you got to have that. But that's okay. You just go down there in your $150,000 fucking, Ford truck, and that'll be fine. Or Cybertruck now, I'm sure, because they're all fucking cooked. Anyway, already started waffling.
Before we get to the funding, though, I had a bit more about some sort of previous activities of Atlas. And if you think back to the first part, I'm sort of making a point here of sort of sifting out stuff that's not to do with fossil fuels, because that's sort of the thing that's generally pretty thoroughly covered on the Atlas network. So kind of looking elsewhere. So the most prominent claim against Atlas is they support fossil fuel interests through misinformation and spreading doubt around climate change. And this is absolutely true, though a fairly reserved and polite way of putting it.
Yes.
But according to any journalist type writing on the network, this is all they're about. That's not entirely true.
Yeah.
And that's not to like have a go at the journalists or whatever. Like it's fair enough. You can't expect them to like spend the time to look at the full picture with these guys like for an extended period of time. It's particularly as like their whole modus operandi is to like, well, one, like embed a lot of people in media, but two, like evade the media from like, knowing enough about them to write about them. Yeah. But fortunately, I have no reputation to uphold, nor do I have deadlines. So rather than look at individual case studies and front groups for climate change, let's look at the stuff around Atlas that's always overlooked.
Yes, good. That's what we're here for.
A small example to start. Back in 2002, a body appeared called NGO Watch.
Okay.
This works to place the philanthropic sponsors of NGOs under increased scrutiny by accusing them of promoting an activist agenda that is unaccountable and challenges the legitimate agendas of governments and the free market.
Wow.
Sounds noble, I guess. Like it could have been like the first iteration of something like Source Watch. And,
yeah, I must say, like, accusing them of promoting an activist agenda that is unaccountable and challenges legitimate agendas of government.
well, that's like
free
literally
market.
like pretty much word for word, like something that's still said fairly commonly.
Not
You know,
loving that
George
quote.
Soros.
That is gross.
Yes.
I don't like it.
The magazine Public Eye wrote an expose on NGO Watch in 2009, showing it was run by the American Economic Institute and the Federalist Society, two members of the Atlas Network.
Mm-hmm.
Some quotes from their article. NGO Watch is a subtle attack on the United Nations, which legitimizes and listens to NGOs. NGO status is guaranteed by the United Nations, an institution long opposed by the right as a threat to US sovereignty and an impediment to US international economic interests. The United Nations symbolizes bilateralism in foreign policy, sets the standards and hence the limits of international adventurism, and gives voice to less powerful countries in international affairs. By targeting both US and international NGOs, NGO Watch is accomplishing its goal of advancing the public critique and damaging the UN's international legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
NGO Watch is a subtle attack on civil society itself. By drawing a distinction between civil society, practices that are acceptable, and those that are unaccountable, the sector of the right that is sponsoring NGO Watch is attempting to strip civil society of its core feature, a space where voices that are independent of government or free market economic institutions can be heard and can exert influence. Which
That's
is
not great.
pretty concise. And it finishes by saying, an effective social movement exploits its connections with power holders and policymakers. If it has the sympathetic ear of federal and state legislators, and it is aligned with the party that holds a congressional majority or the presidency, its voice is magnified enormously. In this case, each group, the movement organizations, and the elected and appointed official power holders has a role to play. NGO Watch is sponsored by two organizations that have a strikingly symbiotic relationship with the Republican Party and especially the George W. Bush administration. It attacks opposition groups that might hold back or even stand in the way of the shared goals of the Bush administration, the sector of the right represented by the AAI and the Federalist Society, and the larger right. Its homepage, ngowatch.org, states that many NGOs are true grassroots organizations committed to humanitarian ideals, but many have now gone beyond their original missions and are assuming the roles of consultants to corporations and public policy and political decision makers. This is especially true for international NGOs. This is a veiled reference to cases in which NGOs have pressured for the protection of human rights or the insertion of environmental regulations in international treaties or international business deals. Obviously, this sort of liberal activism is nearly always opposed by the Bush administration and the AAI and the Federalist Society.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that to me sounds like a prime example of classic Atlas Network projection.
Yeah.
Shining the spotlight on NGOs that work against the interests of Atlas is easy. They know exactly what we should be concerned about because they are the embodiment of those concerns. You could look at this campaign against the UN as a move to get more favourable conditions for the fossil fuel industry by destroying NGOs that promote environmental protection.
Yeah.
You could also look at this broader campaign against the UN as a way to enable conflict by destroying trust in the space for dialogue between nations. Reality is that it's probably both.
Yeah, and also like workers' rights, human rights in general.
Yeah.
Once you plant the seed, I've just read here, just did a bit of a click here, basically that anti-NGO organizations, not specifically NGO Watch, I'm sure there's plenty of them, would basically get the ear of African governments and get them to pass legislation to prevent NGOs from accessing places that would basically prevent them from committing fucked up things.
Yeah, right.
So it worked for both. The government could crack down and be nasty, and private industry could work without any pesky fucking missionaries watching them and documenting them with their iPads or whatever. So, yeah, that's pretty dark.
And that's pretty dark, and it's pretty interesting because whilst the Federalist Society and the AEI get all the credit here, they aren't actually the ones to thank for NGO Watch, because NGO Watch, like the Liberal Party, was created initially as an initiative of the IPA.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was so effective that the Howard government became very concerned about this sinister influence of NGOs, and in 2003 launched an investigation into the influence of NGOs on some government agencies.
Wow. Okay.
The group they hired to conduct this investigation was the IPA.
Oh, wow. That's not good.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he believes his own bullshit. I'm like, oh, no, he's part of a conspiracy. Great.
Yeah, totally. The group lives on.
Yeah, that's not great.
So, for the most part, Atlas acts as a resource and central point of the libertarian/conservative world in order to coordinate messaging and provide training and resources for on-the-ground activism, offering scholarships and grants for new reflection groups and ideas labs, providing courses on political management and public relations, aka propaganda, sponsoring network events around the world, and in recent years dedicating special resources to induce right-wing libertarians to influence public opinion through social networks and online videos. So that's a quote from an article. That the Mont Pelerin Society acts as the inner sanctum of Atlas. A membership list leaked on the website DSmog in 2013 shows Australians make up the second largest representation after the US.
Yeah.
Most of the names are not well-known figures. Perhaps a bit of a concern is that most of the names I didn't recognize were like doctors and professors and like other like associates of universities.
That's surprising because, they're meant to be all fucking Marxist scholars, but not all of them.
Well, that's all fucking bullshit. Yeah. The most recognizable names on the list are John Howard, Tim Wilson, and Maurice Newman. Maurice Newman.
Former chair of the ABC.
Former chair of the ABC. Advisor to Tony Abbott. Also former director of the Center for Independent, founded the Center for Independent Studies. Well, if you can blame one single person for the Atlas Network's presence in Australia, that man is Maurice Newman.
It's Mazza.
Yeah. In 1976, he organised a speaking tour for fellow Mont Pelerin Society member and the Jesus of the free market, Milton Friedman, who was economic advisor to Pinochet in Chile at the time.
Totally cool and normal.
Yeah, and during his tour, they put the wheels in motion for seed money from Atlas to fund the creation of the Center for Independent Studies. This is just a thought that popped into my head as I read that data. When was Whitlam ousted?
So it was 1975.
And I mentioned last time, like if you want to see the specifics of an Atlas campaign, I wrote a fairly extensive blog a few years back showing the process. Medium.com/@pestcontrolAU.
Yes.
That's right. You can go there and you can see for yourself, like sort of what I didn't know was an Atlas campaign when I started documenting it.
Yeah, okay.
Ended up being just that. So if you want to see how it works, you can go into details there. This particular campaign was during COVID, aimed mostly at Dan Andrews and full of all kinds of like anti-vax and QAnon, explicitly anti-vax and QAnon shit amongst like strictly political messaging, coming mostly from like fake accounts that all just like share the same memes throughout a whole host of groups.
Yeah.
But through my observations of these groups, I found that the guy running the groups was a political campaigner from Brighton who campaigns for Tim Wilson.
Yeah, okay.
So that's direct link to the Mont Pelerin Society. And this guy also had like a photo on his Facebook page with like him and John Howard.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So, you know, I thought like, it feels like more like, because I know Tim Wilson was an IPA, handed straight to a safe liberal seat from the IPA. I think he was like the climate change guy or like climate policy guy at the IPA, something like that.
Tim Wilson was like the chair for the sort of human rights discrimination thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah. The thing that Tim sort of asked, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where you're like, him? Really? I mean, he's gay, but that's not enough.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
libertarian. He's not.
He's a member of the Mont Pelerin Society. One of like a very small amount of like the company he keeps is very prominent names, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at it, I'm like, like it's obviously a liberal thing, but like it feels like maybe it's like a IPA is where the connection between this guy and his things and Tim Wilson comes from. But you know, maybe it's like more of a Mont Pelerin Society thing. Who the fuck knows?
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is like a prime example of how the current form of like an Atlas propaganda campaign works. You got like trolls and memes working to get their messaging in front of people loud and clear online with the mask of anonymity, completely unrestricted and unsupervised messaging. And just the same thing as the Russian shit that we just went over. You know, it's like it's actually like probably the model. Like it's just agencies paying influencers more than they would earn otherwise. And providing them with, talking content ideas,
Yeah, it's quite possible. And also just generally just like, sort of amplifying certain things, sharing things to boost them, bot farms, and even so, like, setting up places like in the Philippines, like Joe McCullough had a fucking organization in the Philippines to boost anti-vax stuff, where he just had rooms full of employees just posting anti-vax shit all day on profiles and social media. I mean, it doesn't have to be robots, you can just get low-paid, unregulated labor and amplify whatever messages you want to do. It's not great.
The peak of this campaign during COVID, at the peak of the campaign, Maurice Newman went on Sky News with Alan Jones and just basically repeated all the talking points from the people in these that have been going around these groups for weeks and whipping people up into a frenzy. And I just think it's a really blatant example of this network doing this shit.
Well, Maurice Newman's an Australian businessman who's served in a range of roles in public life and business. He's a former chairperson of the ABC and the Australian Stock Exchange and a former Chancellor of Macquarie University. He has written splendidly and informatively on this very issue, and he joins us tonight. Maurice, thank you for your time. You write that, quote, Donald Trump is and was an outsider. And as you say, whatever his critics at home and abroad say, his supporters, and there are millions of them, see him as a president who finally stood up for the United States of America.
Well, he's not a globalist, and all of the people who are opposed to him are globalists. They are the big tech, big media, the crony capitalists who are into renewable energy and all of those global type activities. And of course, he stood up a lot of people and upset a lot of people in other countries. I mean, the United States is now getting $300 million a year more than it was prior to Trump because he stood up NATO. NATO had been just free riding on the United States, and it took him to actually press what they had all agreed to do but hadn't honoured. Now, he was vilified in the media as being a disruptor and all of these things. In fact, for the last 4 years, Donald Trump has been mercilessly hounded by the media, by his political opponents in a way which I don't think any president in history has been.
Then, of course, he brokered the peace between the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan and Israel. And as you rightly said, any one of which would have ensured Obama another Nobel Peace Prize.
Absolutely. But the narrative was, oh, well, all those countries were already engaging with Israel, so it really didn't count.
He said that he is the victim of the greatest political witch hunt in history. I tell you what, it's hard to disagree with that, isn't it?
I don't think anybody can disagree with that, Alan. And moreover, what I find particularly sinister is what they call the deep state, where you've got bureaucrats who are Democrat, Green, or whatever their political leanings are, actively campaigning in a way to get rid of him. You remember the Russian collusion and all the impeachment that went on. Yeah. And yet I saw just before the election James Comey, who was the former director of the FBI, on Twitter with a Biden-Harris T-shirt and a mug which he was brandishing Biden-Harris and vote for the country. Now, this was a supposedly non-partisan bureaucrat in the FBI.
I mean, it's more than a coincidence, isn't it, that Biden underperformed Hillary Clinton in every state other than where the Democrats were administratively in charge and where there were significant electoral college votes available.
Well, the other thing too, Alan, is a collusion of people like Twitter and Facebook.
Yes.
Zuckerberg and his wife, I think it's Priscilla Chan, had given $400 million to a charity to dispense to the various electoral offices in order that, because the Congress hadn't voted sufficient money, but they were putting up postal polling stations in places which were predominantly Democrat, not Republican. So you've got this going on all the time.
Yes,
so I don't think there's any question.
I mean, they wouldn't. I mean, Twitter and Facebook blocked the readership of that information about Hunter Biden's emails.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question that Facebook and Twitter are partisan organisations who actively campaign to get rid of the President of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, you make this very valid point. Whatever else you might say, the real issue of his presidency and re-election, you say your words, the emergence of the shadows of a well-organised and powerful movement, largely aligned to the radical left. Until Trump, you said, it had tolerated marginal political change, confident that control of the bureaucracy and the judiciary was an effective brake. Having failed to contain Trump, the left is determined under Biden administration to stack the Supreme Court with socialist judges.
And it's not only socialist judges. You've got Janet Yellen, who is his Treasury head-elect, who is coming out talking about the need for Black Lives Matter and all of these left-wing causes. She's going to be the Treasury Secretary if Biden becomes president.
Look, everyone's writing to me. Just a quick one, because we'll talk in the new year about this. Quick one to my viewers about what's called the Great Reset. Everyone's writing to me. Just a couple of thoughts on that.
Well, the Great Reset is going to be the segue from the pandemic. Now that they've got everybody obedient in terms of not leaving the house and doing what they have to do, and we've seen actions from the police in Victoria which are unthinkable in this country. So there's a segue from there into making sure that we control our emissions, that we do what we're told to do with regard to the great, what they call the Green New Deal, which essentially is to pursue policies which are going to be extremely expensive and draining on economic activity.
I think your words were a fascist experiment being pushed by controlling elites.
I don't think that's an exaggeration.
No, I don't think either. Listen, we've got to talk that. It's a big issue. Come January, the Great Reset, they're all talking about it, all the big elites of the world, and we'll analyse it later. Have a wonderful Christmas, Morris. Thank you for all
you
you've
too,
done.
Alan. Thank
There
you.
he is. That's Morris Newman.
All I'll say is they're the masters of projection. Yeah. And this was also, the other thing that went on in that time was the 2020 election, obviously. And this was the week after the 2020 election. So also these people in lockdown whipped up into this frenzy. I don't know if there's like a gang of pedophiles taking kids through tunnels from like the floor underneath them or not,
exactly.
because that's what was also going around in these groups. And the election's just been stolen, and then these guys jump on Sky News and have this ridiculous conversation.
Their brains were very busy back then. It was a tiring time for you, Cooker.
Yes. So astroturfing a buzz around something online and then giving the people what they want to hear is an observable tactic of theirs.
Yeah.
And it really works.
Well, yeah, it's worked so far.
Yeah. There hasn't been the right issue yet to work really well, but they'll get there. They did a similar thing in the campaign against The Voice. Another thing I've documented on that blog, which is 2 years before the Voice vote, this started with this conspiracy theory about fake Aboriginals being shipped in by the UN to write the Uluru Statement from the Heart to pave the way for a full-blown takeover of Australia with the full knowledge of the federal government, and that they think that they can get away with it.
Ah.
Yeah, and this was coming straight from like a former advisor to Tony Abbott from like 2021 onwards. And that wasn't just the narrative that worked for The Voice, though. It was like a whole spectrum of doubt being seeded around The Voice leading into the campaign. The specifics of the doubts changed depending on the audience in the like group or forum or wherever it was being pushed. But the effort, the effort, serious effort went into it, and the core messaging was the same everywhere. That like the devil is in the details of The Voice. And then the first week of 2023, Dutton just like comes out swinging and holds a press conference, and he says, I've got the clip here if you want to replace this with actually Dutton saying this, but he says, it's obvious that the Prime Minister has made a political decision on the advice of his strategists not to release the details of The Voice to the Australian public. And in doing that, I really think he's treating the Australian people like mugs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
There
think
was
about
so much
it a little,
information.
yeah, and if you think about it a little, like obviously the Liberal Party knew everything there was to know about The Voice. Like they created it.
Yeah,
they were in government the whole time.
Yeah.
And it was done. It was finished while they were in government. The campaigns for each side of the vote were put into motion in 2020 when they were still in government. So the strategists for the Yes campaign were hired on the Liberals' watch.
Amazing.
And those strategists, by the way, were the CT group, formerly known
course.
as Crosby Texter.
Yeah.
The guys that campaigned in a suspiciously similar way to Atlas came from the IPA and the Liberal Party, work for several Atlas-affiliated governments, and represent the same industries that support Atlas.
Well, I mean, I'm going to call them your mates. Your mates CT group. You love them.
Not that they even gave that advice in the first place. Like, that clearly just did not happen.
Yeah.
They ran a pretty shit campaign, though.
Yeah, it wasn't nice.
Well, they ran the Yes campaign.
Well, they ran the Yes campaign.
Yeah, the masters of the dark arts of kingmaking somehow just managed to run a really shit Yes campaign.
Do you reckon they threw it? I mean,
I don't know. Well, they've done, the thing is, in their defense, like, they've done a lot of work representing Aboriginal organizations.
Okay.
I have never looked into what those organizations are exactly. I know there is a lot of fuckery when it comes to Aboriginal organizations. So, who knows who the organizations are they represent. But on the surface, it seems like they actually do a lot for the Aboriginal community. So maybe they wanted to do it. But even if they did, they ran a shit campaign.
Yeah, fair call.
But maybe it's because they didn't have the backing of the other networks that they usually go really well with.
Yeah, their mates weren't by their side.
Yeah. There's a lot of influence that wasn't being used.
Yeah, that checks out.
So, based on observations, it seems like the astroturfing works like this. They have a whole host of Facebook groups that are general topics. I like to call them sleeper groups.
Yeah,
they could be community notice boards, things like that, or stupid groups like I Am Australian or Made in Australia.
Yeah,
or like
I see them
really
all the time.
Shitty boomer groups, like
boomer groups. Yeah,
you grew up in the '60s when, or you grew up in the '70s when, or you grew
life
up,
was better. Fucking
all these kind of really generic shit groups.
Yeah,
like hundreds.
Yeah.
On top of that, also another hundreds of explicitly anti-Labor and like anti-progressive groups. But also, even more inconspicuous ones like Bluey memes.
Bluey memes.
You remember that when that came? It was a thing. The Atlantic did a whole like argument about how all, like these Bluey meme groups just went MAGA all of a sudden. All the Bluey memes just like over time just got more and more into Trump, and then this was fully.
Have they watched Bluey? Like it's like such a lefty fucking
MAGA.
Tolerant fucking.
So the groups generally pump out normal content that fits the theme of the group, but they throw political shit in every now and then, or they put like a political, like a right wing tint on the memes.
Yeah.
And then once like a campaign starts, it ramps up to like just being full blown propaganda as you're getting close to like voting day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're like, you also have had like a whole bunch of new groups pop up specifically for that campaign, which work as like the center of like the memes, and they just have like accounts that just constantly just post memes in there, and then they just get shared to all this other like wider network of inconspicuous seeming groups.
Of course,
from what I've observed.
Yes.
So,
well,
what if we look at the groups we know are official Atlas partners, and then look at their messaging, and then look at Ozpol as a whole, you can see what outfits line up with like this kind of messaging. And I just did like sort of like a loose list of Australian networks that sort of seem to just be on this same script. It's like the Liberal Party there, they do it in a much more subtle way than the rest of them.
Yeah.
The Libertarian Party, Ricardo Bossy's Australia One, or there's My Place groups, One Nation. There's a group called like Canberra Connect, and that's like it's not the Christian lobby, but it's like it's a umbrella sort of group for all these Christian groups. Then you have the Christian lobby, the Young Liberals. Then you've got like the whole like the RDA thing.
Yep.
Lumping into that is things like Victoria Forward and like these sort of one-off little propaganda groups that just like appear for a campaign and then just fade off into obscurity.
Yeah, very suspect.
United Australia Party, Nazis.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Let's say it how it is. You've also got Nazis who are on script with like all this stuff and just appear all the time at the rallies. And a vast network of cookers that are most likely just repeating the things that the other places are saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
In recent years, Atlas and its affiliates have been the masters of chaos, leaving a whole host of far-right world leaders in their wake, and some cushy business deals to match.
Of course.
Some recent leaders affiliated with Atlas. Can you pronounce the
Javier
Argentinian El Loco guy's name? Because I can't.
Yeah, Javier Milei. He's the man who takes advice from his dogs.
And Bolsonaro in Brazil, though that one didn't end well. Funnily enough, ended with a storming of the capital by people who thought the election was rigged.
Yes.
Funnily enough. And speaking of Trump, obviously.
Election rigger.
Over in the UK, they're involved with Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Boris Johnson.
Yep.
The new Nationals government in New Zealand.
Okay.
And if we look at the Liberal Party, as we should, an initiative of the IPA, then we can count every Liberal Party Prime Minister as being an affiliate. But definitely some more than others.
Yeah, definitely.
John Howard and the Abbott-Credlin regime in particular.
Well, that thing about the NGO watch was interesting because, like I say, he believes his own bullshit. Oh, no, he's pushing. His own bullshit.
You also aligned with the George W. Bush regime.
Yeah, not great.
No.
Key
to understanding Atlas is understanding the motives of the people funding it, and the truth is, we don't know exactly. We probably never will know exactly. It's always had fossil fuel interests, but it's always had geopolitical interests, and we don't focus on that.
No.
Also, almost without fail, it has strong Christian representation, and traditionally, it has strong support for Israel.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Their influence on shaping the current state of things is immense, particularly in the world of anti-government conspiracy theories and radicalization around Trump and COVID.
Yes.
With the Atlas Network acting as a super spreader of this stuff.
Yeah.
But Atlas itself isn't creating these conspiracies. And the overt, at least, Atlas representatives, they definitely give a wink and a nod to the conspiracies all the time. They generally keep themselves separate when putting out content.
Yeah,
they're always there alongside them at events and rallies and all this stuff, just never on the surface online. And we'll look at these groups that are spreading these conspiracies next time.
Okay,
but I won't say much more on that now, other than to say this is nothing new. It's just the continuation of old methods using new, powerful tools.
Yep. I can see that.
So, who funds Atlas? On the Atlas Network website, it says this. Atlas Network is not endowed, and it does not accept government funding. It does not support political candidates or parties, or otherwise involve itself in partisan politics. We're grateful to those generous individuals, philanthropies, and businesses that entrust us with financial resources to build a greater public consensus around the ideas of a free society by advancing the Atlas Network mission.
Okay.
According to their financials page, the Atlas Network is an independent, not-profit 501c3 organization. It is not endowed and it does not accept government funding. All of its programs depend upon the generosity of foundations, individuals, and corporations. That said, the president of the Atlas Network is listed as a fellow of the National Endowment for Democracy on its website.
Okay.
It's also been reported, many times over, might I add, that they distribute money for the National Endowment for Democracy.
Okay.
Unsurprisingly, corporate donors to the Atlas Network mostly come from fossil fuels, big tobacco companies like Philip Morris and British American Tobacco, Google, who have been regular donors since 2012, which is not surprising when you realize the founder of Atlas, Anthony Fisher, his granddaughter is Google's head of public policy.
Ah, small world.
Yeah. Pfizer. Pfizer might seem like an odd one with all the anti-Pfizer rhetoric going around in the freedom circles, but I will point out on that point that due to the onslaught of conjecture regarding the COVID vaccines and really blatant mistruths and conspiracies surrounding it, the actual adverse reactions to the vaccine and the entire conversation about it in general has been completely clouded.
Totally.
No one can distinguish what's actually real and what's just rumor.
Became a partisan thing, yeah.
And I believe they call this flooding the zone with shit.
Flooding the zone with shit. That's the trick. Thanks, Steve.
As for big tobacco, all the stories you've heard about the tobacco industry propaganda of when we caught on that tobacco was killing us. And when you think about it, it's actually the exact thing that's going on with climate change at the moment, where you have doctors and everything coming out, recommending smoking and trying to dispel any ideas that it could be bad for you. That was all the Atlas network. Propping up dodgy doctors.
Yeah, doctors,
scientists cast out on the fucking science. It's exactly the same shit around climate change, and it's exactly the same shit that happened around lockdowns, and it's exactly the same shit that happened around the COVID vaccine.
Totally. And then you have people shilling for it because they just think they're right. And they want to make a name for themselves sometimes, blah, blah, blah. It's all very exponential.
It's I don't want to say the architecture has been designed to specifically allow this from the Atlas network, but the architecture has been designed specifically to allow this. To give the people who can say the craziest things and be the loudest voice and just say whatever for attention, get them to rise to the top. And the Atlas network's been collecting those people and telling them what to say for a long time, as the Russians have been doing. As well as being tied in with the National Endowment for Democracy, it also sends and receives funds for the State Department.
Okay.
On their work in South America, The Intercept wrote in 2017, over the years, Atlas and its affiliated charitable foundations have provided hundreds of grants to conservative and free market think tanks in Latin America, including a libertarian network that supported the Free Brazil movement and organizations behind a libertarian push in Argentina, including
Fundación Pensar.
That's the one. Yeah. The Atlas think tank that merged with the political party formed by Mauricio Macri, a businesswoman who now leads the country.
A businessman.
A businessman. I don't know how I read that as woman.
Life's life.
Yeah. It's the leaders of the Free Brazil movement and the founder of the Fundación Aluitra in Honduras, an influential post-coup neoliberal think tank, have received financial support from Atlas and are amongst the next generation of political operatives that have gone through Atlas's training seminars.
Dark.
And that's I'll just say that's a very important thing to keep in mind for the next part. Atlas Network spans dozens of other think tanks across the region, including prominent groups supporting right-wing forces behind the unfolding anti-government movement in Venezuela. This is 2017, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And the campaign of Sebastian Pinera, the right-of-centre candidate leading the polls for this year's presidential election in Chile.
And hey, look, Javier Milei's now the fucking president of Argentina, so
they've
it's worked.
And I got a screenshot in here that I don't think actually belongs where it is. But it's interesting. Inconvenient. I don't know where it belongs, but I'll just read it out anyway. Atlas announced in August 2015 that Australian think tank the Institute of Public Affairs was a finalist in its flagship Templeton Freedom Awards for a campaign against the country's laws that put a price on greenhouse gas emissions. IPA Executive Director John Roscombe described the laws as the greatest threat to the free market in Australia since bank nationalisation in 1947.
Okay.
The laws introduced despite a toxic anti-science campaign promoted by the IPA, were repealed in July 2014. Thank you, Tony and Peter.
Mm-hmm.
The IPA's campaign included organising and funding speaking tours and promotions for climate science deniers, mining industry figures, some former Czech Republic president, and some anti-wind farm activists. So, yeah, good on you, IPA.
James Delingpole. I've heard his name before.
Have you?
Yeah.
I don't generally pay attention to those people.
Yeah, wise. You'll live longer if you don't.
Yeah. Another consistent donor to Atlas over the years is ExxonMobil. Probably easily the most overlooked company when it comes to dodgy shit. Like, I feel like everyone knows ExxonMobil does dodgy shit. But also, like, you know, I read a lot about companies that do dodgy shit and they're, like, grossly overlooked.
Yeah,
Rex Tillerson gets away with so much by, like, not attaching his name to, like, foundations and stuff, and just donating through ExxonMobil. Their money is in a lot of shit. Like, well, anyway, he is overlooked, but it'll stay that way today because that's all I've got to say. That's all I've got to say on Rex Tillerson and ExxonMobil. But maybe one day.
To it, though. There is part three.
They're like ExxonMobil, the second largest funders of all this stuff after Charles Koch. There's a whole bunch of donors I've never heard of. So let's look at them one by one
Yeah.
and see what they're all about. This list is it's obviously not complete at all, and this is just people donating directly to Atlas.
Okay.
From a leaked, I guess it was like a tax invoice or something, like a tax statement from 2019.
Yeah. Okay.
But you've got to remember, like, more so than donating to the Atlas network itself is people donating to the individual think tanks that are going to more directly influence that person's individual
the network,
business needs. So a lot more money goes in from straight to the think tanks, but this is to Atlas themselves, and it's quite interesting. So the biggest donor to Atlas by quite a bit is something called the John Templeton Foundation.
Okay.
And they try to encourage the integration of religious beliefs and free market principles into the classroom. That's followed by the Earhart Foundation. And the Earfart Foundation.
That's good. I like that. That's very good.
That works. It's a foundation that funds research and scholarship. The foundation, according to RightWeb, was active in the 80s, supporting burgeoning conservative think tanks like the American Enterprise Institute, which became a prominent source of ideas for people in the Reagan administration. According to a 1981 New York Times article, about 60% of their money comes from foundations, such as the Lilly Endowment, the Smith Richardson Foundation, the Rockefeller Brothers Trusts, and the Earhart Foundation.
All money that should have been taxed at death, let's face it.
Absolutely. The rest of the money donated by major corporations, including Bethlehem Steel, Exxon, J.C. Penney, and the Chase Manhattan Bank.
Mm-hmm.
They also assisted with the founding of Atlas.
Yeah, it sounds like another story.
Foundation. Next biggest is Donors Trust.
Okay.
Described by Mother Jones in 2013 as the dark money ATM of the conservative movement in the US.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. I was going to say, I don't really know what that is.
It's kind of like Citizens United, but before Citizens United. I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Citizens United also being like an Atlas thing too.
Okay.
The next...
they did great with that lawsuit.
It was Bannon, wasn't it? Just like directly... Something
I don't know.
Bannon. Yeah, I think it was. But anyway, the next biggest donor to Atlas is the Scaife Family Foundations. And this is something I'd never actually realized. How much these guys fund everything. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the Scaife Family Foundation.
Shit cunts.
And but I don't know if are you familiar with the people who the Scaife family is.
Yeah, what's it? Roger Mellon Scaife, was it?
Yeah.
The media dickhead?
Gulf
Newspaper
Oil.
guy? Oz Oil? Oh, okay.
So, I'll touch on them more towards the end. But like the Scaife Family Foundations are made up of the Sarah Mellon Scaife Foundation, the Carthage Foundation, the Allegheny Foundation, and the Scaife Family Foundation. Originally, they were all managed separately by Sarah Mellon Scaife, but then in 2015, they merged. And the foundations are financed by the Mellon Industrial Oil and Banking Fortune.
Yep.
In 1869, the Mellon family created T. Mellon and Sons Bank. Later, the bank would be renamed Mellon Bank and become the largest bank in Pennsylvania. The fortune of the Mellon family was also increased through significant investments in the Gulf Oil Corporation and the Aluminium Company of America. Very influential family. The George Edward Durrell Foundation is next. And there's not a lot out there about these guys. But I found like a short description on them on a Causal IQ page, which says the George Edward Durrell Foundation funds values and capitalism projects to support Parkinson's across America, to help with salaries, survivor support programs, support PPE, scholar programs, and support for the disabled.
Okay. Well, that's ambiguous.
Yeah. Guarantees include Hillsdale College and others, and they made 47 grants in the last year.
Okay. Well, I mean, the capitalism projects, I guess, is the most...
Yeah. Outside of that, all I can find on them is a couple of like papers published on banking and gold.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. After that, we have the Carthage Foundation, which is also one of the Scaife family foundations. So they're like the fourth biggest and fifth biggest donors to the Atlas network.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
After that, we got the Clause Foundation, and that's the primary philanthropic vehicle of Arthur Dutchick and Jeffrey Yass, two of the managing directors of Susquehanna International Group, an options trading company headquartered in Bala Cynwyd, Pennsylvania.
It was like Welsh or something. I must say, I was expecting one of them to be named Claus, but no, that's some sort of cute name or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's
Clawing
claws
back
as in
our
like
money.
like claws as in like claws,
Cat claws.
like nail, yeah, like cat claws.
Yeah.
The foundation primarily supports Jewish charities and libertarian causes, most notably the Institute for Justice, a public interest law firm focused on property rights. The Chiaroscuro Foundation.
Yeah, you can do that, not me.
Created to invest systematically in education, family strengthening, humanitarian work, pro-life activities, religious liberty, evangelism, and more.
Okay.
Religious liberty, but not liberty for you to do whatever you want.
Yes. Only religious liberty as long as you're not fucking.
Yeah. Religious
And if you
liberty.
are, there better be a kid involved.
Yeah, exactly.
No, not like that. I mean afterwards. But hey, look, let's face it, who knows?
This is founded and run by Sean Feeler, hedge fund manager, known for his support of conservative and Catholic causes. Bit sus.
Yeah,
the
charming.
Jacqueline Hume Foundation is next. It's a 501c3 organisation supporting free market solutions to education reform. Funds many conservative and libertarian organisations. Founded in 1962, headquartered in San Francisco, began funding various free market initiatives and started focusing its money more specifically in education reform, including charter schools, vouchers, standards, and curricula in 1998. Below are links to its annual IRS form, which I haven't included because that is boring. National Christian Foundation. Founded in 1982 by Larry Burkett, Ron Blue, and Terry Parker, NCF and our nationwide network of local Christian Foundation affiliates granted more than $1.8 billion to over 15,000 churches and ministries worldwide, and the Atlas Network. It's actually amongst the top 10 US foundations in grant distributions and among the top 5 public foundations in a number of categories, and it's a member of the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability.
Oh, financial accountability. Okay, cool.
Yeah. You spend it on the Atlas Network? Good. They're
legit.
accountable
Good.
as fuck.
Super accountable. That's great.
Next is the Randolph Foundation. It's a New York City-based conservative foundation. It's been tax exempt since 2003. According to a report done by the Cincinnati chapter of the American Association of University Professors, prior to 8th of May 2003, the H. Smith Richardson Charitable Trust was known as the Randolph Foundation. On that date, the former Randolph Foundation transferred all of its assets to the new Randolph Foundation, which treated as a successor organization for tax purposes. After the transfer, the original Randolph Foundation was renamed the H. Smith Richardson Charitable Trust and received a grant of $48.5 million from the Smith Richardson Foundation. Nothing sus there at all. I'm sure that's all completely above board.
Totally normal. Also, they made money making Vicks Vapor Rub. So every time you indulge in a cough drop or rub some of that delicious menthol on your chest, you are pursuing the noble goals of libertarians.
You might be feeling better, but it's going to hurt you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
The philanthropic vehicle of Heather Richardson Higgins, whose wealth comes from Richardson Vicks. The Vernon K. Kribel Foundation was established in 1984 by the family of Professor Vernon K. Kribel, a scientist and educator. Vernon, together with his son, chemist Dr. Robert Kribel, perfected an anaerobic polymer that seals metal parts to avoid vibration and leakage. It could be used to prevent loosening of nuts and bolts. Together they founded the Loctite Corporation to market the sealant. The Loctite Corporation ought to develop the first practical superglue technology. He was one of the original leaders of the Heritage Foundation and promoted free market policies. And his daughter found the foundation.
Yeah,
and she also has involved herself on national issues ranging from strategic missile defense to immigration policies, as you do.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's if that's what your dad's will says, and he's got a lot of money, then I suppose that's what you do, right?
You better do it.
Yeah, better.
And they generally advocate pure free market solutions for issues like healthcare and the environment, and advocate for the establishment of strategic missile systems throughout the world to defend the US.
Nothing in that paragraph was good.
It's like, why? Is it because you're doing dodgy shit on such a grand scale that you want to make sure that no one can bomb you?
And I must say, when it comes to things like that, let's take away healthcare but increase military spending. And you're like, okay, cool. If I break my arm slipping over my driveway, I'm just going to be so glad that I'm not going to get bombed by a missile when I try and fix it myself in my garage. Fuck.
Yeah. Too much money. Americans for Tax Reform is next, and they're a not-profit taxpayer advocacy group founded in 1985 by Grover Norquist at the request of Ronald Reagan. According to their website, the president requested a taxpayer advocacy group. That is fucking ridiculous.
Oh man, I mean, look, by the way you pronounce Norquist, I'm gonna say that you're not familiar with his handiwork.
No,
and I tell you what, Grover Norquist is you're gonna have fun when you stumble upon Grover, who wanted to drown government in a bathtub. Well, he wanted to be the size that he could drown government in a bathtub, which sounds a lot like an infant, which I'm not huge on the metaphor there, but that's all right.
It sounds more like a psychopath narcissist.
Well, you'll see.
I bet. Excuse me. I bet he had something to do with. I don't remember the name of the thing at the top of my head. It'll be later on. It'll be in the next episode script. I can't think of it now. The think tank that was the intermediary between the World Anti-Communist League and the Reagan administration.
Okay.
I bet he had something to do with that.
He had a lot of fingers in a lot of pies. I believe he was the one behind this tax pledge, which made a lot of American politicians more or less promise they weren't going to increase taxes, otherwise they get primaried to fuck. So yeah, just a very sketchy operator, very, very smart, very powerful, and very anti-taxation.
They all seem to be, for some reason.
Well, in this neck of the woods, yeah.
It's like, hey, why don't you just not spend your money on like think tanks and just pay tax?
Yeah. Or maybe just not spending money on fucking super yachts and pay tax.
I mean,
and
whatever. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. But like, keep your super yachts, whatever. Just like that money that you're pouring into like this shit.
Yeah,
just
to maintain it.
Just pay your tax with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. But people won't do stuff if there's taxes.
But you might teach kids how to be woke.
They're basically paying tax by having to spend so much money and effort fucking maintaining their big pile of dumb money. So, yeah, no.
Next is the Searle Family Trust, formerly called the D&D Foundation. It's a conservative 501c3 private foundation consisting of wealth inherited from pharmaceutical G.D. Searle and Company, which created the artificial sweetener aspartame, marketed as NutraSweet.
I call it aspartame.
Aspartame. Do you want to elaborate on that?
So basically, aspartame is 951 in the sweetened numbers on the back of your Coke can, and that was created by researchers looking for a stomach ulcer treatment. And they tasted it and went, "Oh shit, this is sweet. This is very sweet." And a bonanza. It's got really fun things like methanol in it and shit. It's pretty intense. I did an assignment on this being a sort of general health conspiracy at the end of high school, which I got very few marks for. And generally speaking, it was for society and culture, which required you to do like surveys and shit. So I go to the playground, find people with Diet Coke bottles in their hands, and basically just be like, all right, well, how do you feel about Diet Coke? And they'd be like, oh, it's got no sugar and that's good. And they'd be like, how do you feel about it now? After telling them it's going to give them like fucking brain tumors and shit. It doesn't really. We've sort of checked that. If that was the case, there'd be a lot of problems. But I was pilled, so that's fun. But there are a few fun things in the journey of GD Searle, because GD Searle, the company itself, did sell to Pfizer, which is something we were discussing. But before that, GD Searle merged with Monsanto, which then sold NutraSweet to a biotech company called Manus Bio. But one of the really fun parts about GD Searle merging with Monsanto, not insinuating anything here, I'm just saying that was overseen by Donald Rumsfeld, who was the CEO of Monsanto at the time. Monsanto was probably one of the bigger evil companies that I was very paranoid about back in the day. And to be honest, a lot of that stuff wasn't really conspiracy theory. It was just conspiracy. I mean, Terminator genes in seeds and all that sort of GM crop stuff. I wasn't wrong.
Well, it's not like anyone else in that administration, did any stuff that was benefiting companies that they were sitting on the board of at the time. So there's it's a pretty wild conclusion to jump to.
God forbid. And when it comes to Monsanto and the Bush era, oh my God, the amount of fucking blowjobs they gave that company it's just fucking cooked. But anyway, I've got a special spot in my heart for Monsanto and NutraSweet because that was a very big focal point of mine. Annoying people in pubs trying to talk about agriculture when everyone was just like, are you fucking serious? Do you know how much I care about Terminator genes in seeds? Fucking zero. Shut up. Anyway,
is it real though? Do they do Terminator genes in seeds?
Yeah, so like what it does is basically just like stops the seeds from being reused. But that's fine if you choose to have GM crops for various reasons. Like for example, you get the Roundup Ready crop, where you have a GM seed that will not respond to Roundup, the glyphosate. So, and that's of course the big hot topic, and it's still being sort of resolved, generally speaking. But what we're finding is that just like anything, dose is the issue. So Roundup, if you spray Roundup on food and then eat it, your body will excrete it quite successfully, and it's no big deal. But if you are the sprayer, you better wear some fucking good PPE because, like anything, a lot of glyphosate isn't good for you. But these Roundup Ready seeds would also terminate. But that's fine unless, of course, you have issues with pollination and wind where you cross-pollinate crops across properties. And what I remember hearing is that Monsanto would then go ahead and find if you were using the seeds and then sue them. For intellectual property violations, which is just a really special kind of evil. But I don't think that was a conspiracy theory. I think that was all pretty much happening. It's hard to delineate these things because I was getting a lot of information from the same source. But, that kind of, I think that happened, and that was bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it probably happened. If the general story probably happened, whether that's like all of the story, or like whether it's like, there was actually dodgy farmers collecting the seeds and growing them because they're better or whatever, and that's what the lawsuit actually was.
Who fucking knows?
But I dare say that shit probably happened. Like it came from somewhere.
God,
because Monsanto is like very intertwined with like the power structure in like America. So you'd think like they're not going to spread deliberate like misinformation about Monsanto out of nowhere.
Yeah, I find it very difficult.
It's got to come from somewhere.
Difficult to believe that Monsanto aren't evil, but I have been conditioned a certain way. So
no, they're very intertwined with the American establishment. Of course, they're evil.
The American agricultural complex.
Yeah.
You grow cereal to make us fat, and then you pump us full of pesticides, and then you sell us NutraSweet, which Coke Zero is pretty good. Anyway.
You know what gets me? We'll finish this tangent on this point. Can you tell me what the difference is between Red Bull Zero and Red Bull Sugar Free?
Marketing. I think it's the same thing with Diet Coke, Coke Zero.
It's just ridiculous how they like continue to like sell these two different products that are clearly, like, obviously the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems a bit silly. I
actually did Nurofen get like a class action lawsuit about doing that?
Yeah, they did actually. I mean, their medical claims are a bit different, but because they were saying the same drug did different things. So you're like, oh, this is for ankle pain, and you're like, but it's ibuprofen. Shut up. Yeah. But yeah, I did the Pepsi challenge once. I ordered it online. It came in a little box, and you basically put a straw in each can, and you don't know which is which. And I got it wrong. Pepsi Max versus Classic Coke.
Right.
I picked the wrong
Pepsi
one.
Max was the Coke. Pepsi Max is good.
Yeah, Pepsi Max. I buy it now because the fucking
Pepsi
Pepsi
Max is
challenge. Because I'm
great.
like, you know
Yeah.
what? I genuinely don't know the difference. I would always say that Pepsi Max was shit because I'm an idiot. And then when I did the Pepsi challenge and I failed, I was pretty pissed at the time. To be fair, we came back home and I was like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, it's a Pepsi challenge. We're gonna do it!" and yeah, and then losing it, I'm just like, "All right, well, I mean, whatever's on special, bro." It's like I don't know the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Pepsi Max is also. I'd probably prefer it over Coke.
There you go.
And I don't like Diet Coke at all, or even Diet Pepsi. I just can't deal with it.
There you go. Well,
Like,
I mean,
can't
look,
drink it. It's disgusting. But Pepsi Max, awesome.
I reckon, mate, you should do the Pepsi challenge and see, and you
Can you
can
still
rock
do it?
your world.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Look online.
next we have the JM Foundation, and that was created by Jeremiah Millerbank, co-founder
Ah.
of the Borden Milk Company in
where the JM came
1924. Originally, its mission was to help integrate people with disabilities from World War I into American life at a time when they were quite stigmatizing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was a proponent of limited government and the independent liberty of social Darwinist thought, popular around universities like Yale during his age.
Okay.
To realize his vision, the JM Foundation directors support activities that foster self-sufficiency, personal responsibility, and private initiative.
I feel like that falls back off on the disabilities part. Pick
Well,
yourself up in your
that doesn't
bootstraps.
say-
Okay,
yeah,
well, not
they're
you.
not-
You don't have arms.
It's like, hey, yeah, back 100 years ago in 1924, we supported disabled people.
Yeah, but then we
clearly
thought
not.
they should,
And now we can support them through initiatives of think tanks
get your
that-
shit together, disabled
that
people.
help us pay less tax.
Yeah. I
The
don't know.
Acquiesce Foundation is a tax-exempt private foundation based in Elmira, New York. The foundation gives to fuel conservative causes through right-wing organizations and think tanks such as members of the State Policy Network. Larry Ahn, the foundation's executive director, serves as the president of Hilldale College, a small liberal arts college in Michigan, which receives much funding from right-wing think tanks, as the college does not receive state or federal funds.
Sounds charming.
And that's all I could find about all the donors I could find to the Atlas Network.
Yeah, okay. All the big ones, at least.
Yeah, so this that list is from 2019,
Yeah.
and some of these haven't existed for nearly 20 years.
I feel like there's varying degrees of evil with some of those ones. We're sort of ambiguous about their goals. And some of them were just like, fuck, free markets can't. And some of them were like, look, we like nice things. Okay. And it's like, but capitalism's good. You're like, oh, there it is. They weren't all quite as blatant in their mission statements, but some of them really were unpleasant sounding and just, really cooked white man who, likes to have their drink at the automobile club and hit their help and all that sort of stuff. I'm not a fan.
It's amazing how those kind of people get really into politics, weird culture war politics.
Well, I mean, that's what we were talking about earlier with the Tim Pool thing. I mean, that's a really good way of distracting people from pursuing things like, I don't know, what their rights.
Yeah, exactly.
Get them angry at trans people and they'll forget the fact that they're being fucked by their employers.
So, John Templeton Foundation, the biggest donors at the top, have given just short of 10 million to Atlas, and groups like Earhart and Donors Trust about 3 or 4 million each. I didn't include all the organizations from Charles Koch, but there's at least 4 of his in there donating huge amounts on the regular, as well as the Cato Institute, which is a think tank of his, and Heritage, which he's a massive funder of as well.
Yeah.
But that isn't the complete picture at all, because this is only American donations directly to the Atlas Network. It doesn't consider any donations to individual think tanks in the network, of which nearly all of these groups donate even more to directly. Doesn't include any Australian, Asian, or most importantly, European donations.
Okay.
Many of these organizations, which I say most importantly because that's where the Mont Pelerin Society came from.
Yeah, okay.
Many of these organizations, in particular the ones amongst the largest contributors to Atlas, like Donors Trust and Earhart, are just murky bags that billionaires and whoever else can just throw stuff in, throw cash in discreetly.
Yeah.
Like the Mercer Family Foundation donates millions to Donors Trust.
Fucking
Also
love
groups
Mercer.
like Heritage, Cato, etc. That's the Mercer family. Also donate large amounts to Heritage, Cato, etc.
Yeah.
Those guys, along with Charles Koch, and Rex Tillerson and the Scaife Mellon family are the power players of the Atlas Network.
Vested interests, rich people who want more money, general cunts, all obsessed with free market capitalism. I mean, it all lines up, right? Like it's just
it lines up also because this is the money side. That's the money, like as in like the business interests of Atlas. But there is a whole other side of Atlas, and that's the ideological interests.
Yeah,
and that's what we'll go over next time.
Okay, cool. It's something to look forward to.
Yeah, it's it gets pretty wild.
I can imagine they're not. I don't think I'll agree with a lot of their ideological positions and standpoints.
Oh no. Oh no. God, no! Well, no one would. That's why they're so discreet about it. Yeah, that's why this thing exists.
Yeah, exactly. You got to put these horrible beliefs in Trojan horses.
Exactly.
Just absolutely fucking pathetic. Well, that was enlightening. I now know a lot more about rich American families with mostly dead breadwinners who are just pursuing ideological outcomes for their dead relatives who made a lot of money in times where slavery was cool.
That's an excellent point. That's something that stood out to me when I first started looking into who funds all this kind of stuff. Like just a very clear picture is like old money, second,
money.
third, fifth generation money just being maintained.
Yeah, you've done nothing of value. You've just basically just spent as much money as you think you should spend on taxes on making the world worse, as opposed to just spending money on taxes.
And if you look at if you think I did a multi-part podcast on this guy Harry Bridges.
Yeah,
it was like
that
this
was good.
Australian-born Labor leader.
Yeah,
and it's where it was like his actions, the San Francisco strike of like 1930, like 3 or 35 maybe.
Yeah.
Set a lot of this kind of thing in motion. That was more for like the group known as the Family. It's like a fundamentalist Christian group, sect, I guess, that's like really intertwined with the state in America.
Yeah.
Like they're based in Washington DC, and like politicians live there and shit.
Interesting.
That was sparked from like Harry Bridges, and that's this perfect example of just like cunts with way too much money getting scared by the labor trying to fight for rights and just deciding, I'm going to put this in a trust and we're just going to stamp this out. I don't care if like it's out. If the fight goes longer than I'm around, but it's going to fucking continue.
Yeah.
And, this is what this fucking is. This fucking, I don't know. There's something to be said about like corporations being their own legal entities and then, really like, they just run on this, like on like money and people just keep it going. But really it's like, it's an entity in itself that's doing some fucking damage,
That's what I see happening when Elon Musk dies. Unless something dramatic changes.
Totally.
He's just going to... But the only thing about Elon Musk
he's got a lot of kids that are going to need some money.
Yeah, but they don't fucking like him, so that helps. But,
there's one in particular that's not going to be getting any of that cash.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. She's very funny, though. Non-zero chance that Elon Musk is doing a lot of this because there's dirt on him or something quite powerful against him, because Elon Musk suddenly became weird and pilled, bought Twitter and just became this disinformation pushing dickbag. And there is something deeply suspicious about how he parades around pushing agendas that are specifically against his interests.
Yeah.
Financially. It's that thing of like, is this guy that stupid?
Well,
or is something happening here?
Look at who he got together to
fund Twitter with,
or maybe
Saudis and Russians.
Geopolitical interests.
That's
involved
fucking
there.
So dodgy.
Like I think you say Rex Tillerson's fucking overlooked and pointing the finger at for a load of shit, but so are the Saudis.
Yeah, the Saudis are an interesting bunch. And like when it comes, so when it comes to Elon, maybe when he dies, his ideological interests die there, because his ideological interests are basically the equivalent of a fucking hostage video. But like, who knows? Who fucking knows?
Well, I think one thing that I think the more I sort of thought about it, the more I kind of buy into like his panic about AI becoming too powerful, and we need regulations and whatever. And then, well, I think him and the other rich people that decided to join that campaign with him, I think their concern is AI being able to pull together illegal shit they've done, like financial crimes in the past.
Okay. That's
and,
interesting.
Make some connections that maybe some people haven't made yet.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting, whether AI ends up indicting people.
Yeah, because it's like, well, what is his concern about AI? Because after that sort of failed, he just like released Grok as if like, okay, well, I'm just going to try and fucking break it. Like, here, hey, do anything with this coming into an election. Here, it makes images now that are really good. And, maybe he's just trying to make sure that some reining in of AI does come in so that it can't quite... so that there's
like JD Vance
restrictions on
Trump.
what it can like say and shit,
Yeah, it's like, look, you have to restrict AI. Look how fucking bad it is. Grok is terrible.
Yeah, JD Vance would be the perfect vessel to get that through as well.
Yeah, well, he's got mates, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm banned from Meta AI. And I don't...
Why?
They're fucking cowards. They haven't said so. But I can't do prompts. So I'm going to sort of chat with some mates. And we started just cycling through prompts. And it got real fucking silly. And you'd ask for something and it wouldn't give it to you. It'd just do something really unrelated. But then like 4 prompts down the track, like we were asked for a penguin at one point. And then the penguin finally showed up. And at one point there were cucumbers involved because we were trying to get the like Bob the Builder was the starting point. And Bob the Builder, I think we were trying to get him to like sort of suck like a phallic object or something. So like cucumbers came up. And then like every weird thing that came up had fucking cucumbers all over it. Cucumber tattoos was a big thing that it had. It was fucking weird. But I couldn't do any prompts. So I said something like add a car to the scene just to see what happened. Because generally speaking, what happened, we got the thing in such a twist that saying something didn't actually happen. It just made a lot of the previous prompts actually happen that it refused to do. But it said no to me. And then my mate, Tom Ellis, he put in Meta AI, put in a car and the fucking thing did it. Obviously, there was no car. It just did some really weird shit involving mayonnaise, cucumbers, fucking a stage, fire, a guitar, an old guy on a fucking bicycle. It was real fucking weird.
Well, this this is funny, but like also like amazing to me because I didn't even realize Meta had like AI out that you could use.
Yeah, in Facebook Messenger, I could use it on my phone to an extent. And then as I kept going, I mean, one of the things that I did say is Bob the Builder should be eating a bunless hot dog with no sauce. And I was definitely hoping that looked like a cock. But Meta AI was all over it, knew exactly what was going on. And from there, I couldn't get anywhere. And that may have been the point where I got banned. But if that's what gets you banned from Meta AI, I mean, come on, guys. Like, that's a bit much.
How much is Bob the Builder paying Zuck?
Yeah, I know, right? Fucking ridiculous. And I've got a cooker profile.
It's the unions.
Yeah, exactly. It's George Soros.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I've got a cooker profile and I tapped in some prompts in there and no problem. And I try and load up Meta AI in the browser and it just says you can't use it at this time.
That's crazy because I haven't even seen it. But I guess I'm not on it that much. And then when I'm on Messenger, it's like it's built into my browser. So I guess maybe it's like it's not up for that version maybe.
I'm just on the naughty list. Anyway, we could yammer on for hours. But we're wasting our poor listeners' time.
Yeah. It was the next part I'm going to have to do some cutting down because look, it's like 25 pages here.
Yeah, we'll have to talk a lot less shit for the next one.
So we're going to have to chop this down a bit, I think. But,
well, look, either chop it down or just make it into another part. We can finish this over the course of a year or so. We've been postponing this for like 3 weeks. Oh, we'll do Tuesday at 9 p.m. Tuesday passes.
It's fucking tough. I'll tell you what, like having 2 kids now is
insane.
I know people always say to me, 2's much harder than 1 when they found out that we're having another one with this like terrified look in their eyes. People who understand the experience. And I took it with a grain of salt, but goddamn, it's right. There's not much time for much stuff. And when there is time for stuff, you're fucking exhausted.
This is how the cabal keeps you down, mate. You can't learn the truth. because you got kids to deal with. That's why JD Vance is so desperate to make you all baby makers. Whereas I'm over the target. And by over target, I mean overworked and exhausted. So don't worry. Capitalism is doing a great job where the baby's leaving a vacuum of time and leisure, whatever the fuck that even means. Anyway.
What's that? Yeah. What is that? Leisure. You mean when you're like rocking a baby back and forth like this, trying to get him to go to sleep? That's leisure, yeah.
Yeah, well, if taking ketamine, it might be fun.
Might be
Elon Musk
dangerous
does.
for the baby.
Well, you don't have to worry too much about that. It'll be fine. Just
Yeah, no,
ketamine.
actually, what am I talking about? That's
You
crazy
fall
talk.
backwards, they fall on you. The baby will be fine. Anyway, thank you, listeners. Hope you learned something. I did. And we'll catch you in the next part, or God knows when.
Adios.
Thanks, mate.
I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.
Fuck me, you guys are bastards!